Alrighty, this is episode 5. So if you've been here for all 5 episodes, thank you so much. This is your girl, Dania, and if you can't tell, I think I'm excited on everyone, but I'm like really, really excited for this installment of our Awakening in the Black Community series. I have, I just got to do this justice. So what was my son in here doing? I'm sorry, I'm sitting in my altar room and like my son was in here with things and items and I'm just like, what was he doing? So my uncle, the very illustrious Habeeb Morgan, and I'm so excited to have him here. It's early in my journey, I was looking for an elder and it kept coming up in divination. You need to find an elder, you need to find an elder, but an elder wasn't coming. And at the time, I think he was maybe deployed, but I like, he wasn't like, I couldn't get in touch with him. And it was just like, he was the first person I thought of. Like, I think there was a Papa Legba post and she had posted a while back. And I'm just like, I need to reach out to my uncle. I need to reach out to him when everything first started. And so it's only since I initiated it that I've been able to really talk to him. So I was really honored when I asked if he would join me for this conversation. So I'm gonna let him introduce himself. We're gonna get in. If we end up giggling and giggling, like sparkling in these vibes, he's always been more like a big brother. Like we're significantly close in age. So it doesn't always feel like he's an uncle. So in that note, Uncle Habeeb, I will let you introduce yourself to the people.
Well, I first and foremost, I just want to say I am honored to be here. I am truly humble, honored, thankful, and grateful that you would have me on. And I'm just really moved by that, So thank you for having me. My name is Habeeb Jakeem Morgan, and I am Donnie's uncle. And as she said, we were pretty close in age. Actually, myself and quite a few of my nieces and nephews are actually not that far apart. So I was always considered, I guess, the uncle, but the young uncle, the young quote unquote cool uncle.
Yeah.
I think that's what all the nieces and nephews considered me
Is
as.
your uncle coming over?
The cool uncle, because I was not that much older, so I kind of embraced that, throughout the years, and it was, it's been pretty cool. But again, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to our conversation, to our build that we're going to have this evening.
Awesome. So I'm going to start the way I start with everybody, and even though I know you, I didn't like as a kid. It's like I knew you as a kid, but it's a little different hearing you talk about it.
Right.
So the way I kick this off with everyone is tell me about you growing up, like pre-awakening, pre-discovering anything.
Sure.
How you were raised, what kind of practices, religious, spiritual. Just tell me what that's like.
Sure. So I grew up in a home where my parents were identified themselves as Hebrew Israelites. So I grew up myself and my older brothers. I'm the youngest of 6, and we grew up in a home raised as Hebrew Israelites, and we practiced Hebraic law heavily as much as we could. So we kept Passover, Yom Kippur, all the major quote unquote Jewish holidays that you would hear of, from other people. We kept that, and I just want to say this real quick, just to make a clarification. So, it's funny because I think a lot of people get confused with the whole Hebrew Israelite thing. So we it's funny because we're not the current Hebrew Israelite movement, right? The ones that are outside howling and screaming at people and
yes,
in different cities and across the country or whatever. we're not part of that sect. In fact, I'll be honest with you. I had joined the military back in 1989, and they weren't around. I went to Germany, came back in 93 back to the States. And then suddenly when I got back home to New York, I started seeing this group. And I asked my dad, well, who are these cats? And he didn't know. So those that grew up in my community, because we were a pretty close-knit uh, Israelite community, and we, for the most part, were very laid back, if you will, whereas we weren't up in people's faces. We were close knit. If you wanted to come and see what we were about, that was fine, but we weren't actively out trying to recruit nobody, and we weren't cursing nobody out in the street.
Mhm.
Um, in fact, to be honest, although we were Black Hebrews and we're proud of that, much of how we carried on was maybe, for lack of a better term, even Eurocentric. So we were laid back. We weren't up in your face. We're close knit, and so that other group, we had no idea where they had came from. Just one day they were there, So so I just wanted to clarify that they weren't even around when I was coming up.
Exactly.
This was like a thing that happened almost overnight in the early to mid 90s. And this group popped up, and they were very combative and stuff like that. But that's not what we represented and what we're about. It was very interesting growing up as a Black man in America who also practiced quote unquote Judaism, right? That was an interesting challenge in and of itself, right? Because those that don't do the research wouldn't actually recognize a Black person as being a Hebrew or a Jew or whatever the case may be. And of course, I was raised in a family that taught us that we were the original Hebrews. And then many people know that, right about now in 2022, a lot of people already know that.
Right, exactly.
So that's not a conversation that people don't know about. But it was interesting. Friday night, everything was shut down. You got ready, prepared for the Sabbath, which was, or the Shabbat in Hebrew, right, which is Saturday. So Friday night, you kind of like chilled out, and Saturday you went to the temple or the synagogue, and you went to your services and stuff like that. And Saturday evening, you can go back to your normal activities. So that was my life from birth until I was 18 and then joined the military. Yeah.
Awesome. So first, I want to say it's funny because when I tell people, you know, when I get that question, I'm like, I was raised as a Hebrew Israelite. Oh, no, not the same. Not
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like
different.
yeah,
Okay,
it's
well,
funny. I got to clarify. You got to clarify.
exactly. And you never thought you would have to clarify that. Like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's us and then there's them.
Right. That's a
And
whole other group, and
it's a
I
whole
really
other
don't
group.
know. I
Do
don't know
you
where they came from.
do you remember the first, I don't know if deviation is the right word, but that's probably the word coming to me. But the first where like you're on this path of being a Hebrew Israelite, and then there's like, hey, what's that over there? Do you remember what that first moment
Oh
was like?
man, yeah. So although being raised in a very stringent household where we were Hebrew Israelites, but as far as the whole Bible is concerned, uh, my parents were Bible thumpers. So they were like any other Christian type of Bible thumpers, except they really went hard in there. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I would have to say my parents were very true to their belief, and I have to respect that. So the diet was different, you know, how we did certain things were different, you know. But I remember you talking about my first deviation from that. I actually was in junior high school, and how I actually picked up the name Joachim, which is the middle name that I took, and most of my friends that I grew up with called me by, was because I had actually had some friends who were part of the 5% Nation, and
Ah,
I actually uh, got into that. So I was
Really?
a Hebrew Israelite, but I also was down with the Nation of the 5%, the whole God's Earth thing, and all that. So I was walking two paths at the same time for a long, long time. So that was my first deviation uh, into something different, you know. And not a lot of people knew that. Some people knew, what I'm saying? And my parents didn't know anything about it, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, I was walking down the street and they was like, they go Jakim to God, well, basically I would go to the temple and be Habeeb the Israelite. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So I was walking, yeah. So I was walking two paths at once. But here's the thing, as in some of my current beliefs, there was similarities in certain things. For instance, the name that I had chose for myself at that time, which was Jakim, was actually a Hebrew name which meant to
yes.
resurrect. It means resurrect or resurrection or to lift up. So I actually had picked the Hebrew name to be my 5% name. So it was kind of weird how I kind of finessed that, right? And so that worked. But you know, I had always read that passage and I forgot, and it's shameful that on the top of my head I can't think about it. But there's a passage in the scriptures where it says, ye are gods. I have said ye are gods, but you shall die as men. So I always justified my slipping off into that because of that passage saying that ye are gods. So so that was my justification for that. So
That's
that was my whole little dance. It was a tightrope dance. Boy, I tell you,
it- like one day we'll have to do a whole conversation on the 5%ers because
Oh yeah.
I would like that's one of those things where I've always been curious because I
Hmm.
hear it, but I'm just like, okay, well, what are they? What does that mean?
Right.
Um,
It- you know,
so
it's
go
it's
ahead.
interesting because in if, and this is, I guess, with any practice, if you are true to what you are preaching, right? Because
Right.
if you're true to what it is that your belief system, then you actually are walking a path of quote unquote righteousness. In its essence, the 5% movement is actually a good path. Of course, there are those that do whatever they're going to do under the
Within the
umbrella
past.
of that. You
Exactly.
understand what I'm saying? So, but in its essence, their practices are actually nothing wrong with it. You know what I'm saying? Is those who have practiced it and then done other things under that umbrella or that moniker that has sullied that. And of course, the same thing, look, with the whole Israelite movement. There, as soon as you say Israelite, people are like, oh my God, these guys are radicals. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? And so
exactly.
people have taken the Israelite movement and had muddied that too. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? So, yeah.
Um, so if you had to describe your eclectic
Oh
practice
man.
now, what does it
Yeah.
include? What paths, what practices, what does it look like now?
So that's a good question because it is very eclectic. So I have taken some of what I have learned uh, in the scripture and in a house where, the type of household I was raised in, and brought it and kind of married it with a lot of my spiritual practice because I see similarities. I
Okay.
see a lot of similarities. I am now in the Ifa uh, uh, Santeria type of spirituality, right? I am a child of Yemaya and Olokun, right? And so there's things that I see in that truly, damn, I go through some of the ceremonies in our spiritual house that I'm a part of, and some of the ceremonies, I'm like, wow, man, this sounds familiar to me. And then I'll flip back and I'm like, wow, the offerings and the sacrifices and stuff like that, and the offerings that you do is similar, And then it's interesting because there was a picture recently that I had posted on my Facebook a couple of years ago, and it was a Hasidic rabbi who had a chicken, and he was He had the Torah in one hand and his chicken in the other, and he began to, wave the chicken around himself, which was to dispel negative energy and kind of like to wipe away his sins. This is around the Yom Kippur time. And I'm like, wow, this is interesting. Now, this guy is taking something that is clearly, you know, uh, not part of quote unquote his culture, right? And he's doing this, you know. So where did this come from? So there's a lot of things that are done on the spiritual side. If if those that practiced Hebrew Israelite did it everything that they were supposed to do that's written in the scriptures, it would be right along what people do in Santeria or Ifa or Voodoo even. You
Mm-hmm.
understand what I'm saying? It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing it for the same reasons. When you're doing sacrifices or whatever the case may
Mm-hmm.
be, you are trading energy
Exactly.
in order to do certain things, in order to get favor, to make certain things happen for
Exactly.
yourself. And so
Exactly.
it's very similar,
Like the blood on the
So
doorpost,
right, that yeah, exactly. Blood on the doorpost, all that stuff, and it's so interesting because I was always taught as an Israelite that we couldn't do certain things, and the excuse was always, well, we're not in our own land, so we can't do these certain things. But lo and behold, you got these other spiritual groups that they go ahead and they go get their animals from wherever, and they make their sacrifices and whatever, and it works, and they're better off for it. So I'm like, wow, that's very interesting. But I do have a very eclectic practice. I take, like I said, the Psalms is something that's heavy in my practices. I consider Psalms to be a book of magic.
it
So I
is.
use Psalms in a lot of my practices. So there's that, and then of course on the Ifa side, I have my lekes that I wear, and I honor um Yamaya and Olokun, of course, my warriors and Ilegua and stuff like that, you know. Um, and then I also uh, work with the angels, and so there's that Kabbalistic, going back to the Hebrew thing again. I dabble and use Kabbalistic magic as well in my practice. You know what I'm saying? So like you said, it is very eclectic. Yeah.
How did you? I won't go to the Kabbalistic because I feel like that was a logical step of progression.
Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely. Yeah.
Santeria,
Uh-huh.
how? Like how did that come about?
So um that's very interesting. And that was just a by chance because when I actually ran into the group I'm in now, that's basically it is a Santeria house. I was actually looking for a Vodun house. And actually I was a toss up between Palo Mayombe, which is super deep, and then Vodun. So I was doing some networking and stuff like that, and I met a young lady who, she said, "Hey, come and see, my spiritual godfather and get a reading and what have you." And things just kind of clicked, and I felt very comfortable there, and so I wound up and going the Santeria route. Yeah, yeah.
So being raised as a Hebrew in an Abrahamic faith, thou
Hmm.
shalt have no other gods before me.
Right.
Do you feel like you are holding another God before the Most High?
You know, wow, that is a deep question. Um, I don't think so. For myself, no, I don't feel that way at all because um and that can go into a whole nother like conversation, a whole nother
I'm
show.
here for it.
But
Give me the.
but
I
this
don't
but
feel it either. Give me the crib
yeah,
note version.
I do not feel that way. I feel that if anything, I tapped into another facet of the Most High, if you will, because let's break it down like this. Let's look at, if we could do this. Even this in itself is like you to re, to try to bottle something is to reduce it, and you can't
Yes.
reduce,
Yes.
you know. But let's look at a diamond, right? A pure diamond. If you see it, it has so many different facets
Faces.
to it, right?
Yes.
But it's still one diamond, right? So if I look at it from this angle or this angle, it really don't matter. I'm looking at the diamond.
Mhm.
I look at spirituality in that way, and I I I believe that, actually I know in my heart that when you get into different types of spirituality, at the very end of the day, they're all trying to say the same thing. They're all trying to look
Yes.
at that diamond, but they're looking at
Yes.
it from different angles,
Yes. Yes.
you know? Yeah.
So we're gonna get deep. Like we're going there. I'm going there.
Oh, let's go. Let's
Let's-
go.
So
Let's go. Let's go.
um, the the presence of the Creator, Spirit, the Divine around you.
Mhm.
How does it feel to you now versus how does it felt maybe when you were younger?
Mm, wow. Um, I want to say when I was younger, I always felt, uh, you know, uh, I always felt like there was something missing. Um, we would go to the temple, or if I didn't go to the temple, we would stay home and read the scriptures, and we read the same things over and over and over again, and the same stories day in day out. Every, like I said, every Passover or Yom Kippur or Shavuot or whatever the case may be, and it would always be the same thing over and over and over again. And I said, this is, and I always say that was my foundation, and I appreciate it because I can, like I said, I can see
The correlation.
that, and yeah, and everything else that's going around. But I want to say I never felt complete. In this journey, you're never gonna feel 100% complete. But I felt there was a whole lot missing to this story. And here's something, and I guess to expound, now I feel a little bit more complete. I feel like I have a little bit more power over my life, if you will, spiritually. I always felt like I was in a begging position before and a pleading position, to now I'm in a position where whatever spirits or energies are working, we're working together to help to better me. We're working together to help me grow, if you will. Whereas before I always felt that I was in a pleading, begging, rolling on the floor, foaming at the mouth, hoping something would go right type of situation. And I'm gonna tell you this is funny, but I'm gonna tell you what really brought me here. Um, I think I was living in Massachusetts at the time because I had jumped back onto active duty military, and I was in Massachusetts, and things were just happening, man. A lot of stuff, financial stuff was going on. The unit I was in was jacked up, and they were trying to have me do stuff that wasn't right. And they were just, it was just, I was like, the stress level was through the roof. And my spirit was just super heavy, man, like super heavy. I was drinking heavily every day after work, and it just, I was just really screwed up. So I was like, I was trying to, I had prayed at times, but it didn't even feel right no more. I was trying to pray, but it was like, this ain't doing it. This ain't getting it. You know what I'm saying? And I never forget this. I was laying on my living room floor. I had these hardwood floors in the place I was in. I was laying on the living room floor, looking at the ceiling, and I was like, I gotta do something different. I gotta do something different. And I was in such despair. Now, peep this, right? You're gonna crack up. I was in such despair that I had come to this conclusion, right? I had said that, okay, because I had did this other path for so long, I'm gonna go completely in the opposite direction. I'm gonna go straight left. So I actually was looking for a book, some
Oh God,
type
I
of
already know what's coming. I already know.
so I was looking for a book that I can actually make a pact with the devil.
Why
yeah,
am I not surprised?
I was looking for a book where I can go ahead and make some contracts with some devils and some demons so that I can fix my situation. Mind you, I never found I never found such book.
Thank you.
But what I did find, but I was willing to go there at one time, right? I
Wait,
was like this, listen,
I'm gonna
listen,
left all the
I
way.
needed
Keep going.
I needed some results.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So listen. So and that's a true story too. And so what wound up happening is I didn't find that, but I did find The Secret, right?
Ah,
And so I read The Secret, and then I was cool. And I was like, okay, okay. And I started applying some of that, but I said, no, I know there's more. And so that began to take me down the path to reading stuff I wouldn't normally read. One thing I found out about enlightening oneself is
yes,
read stuff.
yes.
Anything that you've been told as a kid not to read,
Read
read
it.
that shit.
Yes,
Read that shit. Excuse me. Read it
you're fine.
because you're gonna find out some stuff, right? And you're gonna be like, wait a minute. Whatever they think this book say, don't say that. And you
Exactly.
know what? It's actually certain things start to click as you begin to read and enlighten yourself.
Yes.
And so I began to read a little bit of everything. Um, One of the books that really opened me up to more information was a book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And this is a book by Manly P. Hall. The book is crazy thick, maybe 1,000 pages. And I've read that book several times. I first picked it up maybe 2012. This is now 2022. So I've read that book maybe about 4 or 5 times in 10 years. And every time I read it, it still opens me up to information.
The Secret Teachers of
Um,
All Ages.
yes, yeah, by Manly P. Hall. That is a fantastic book for a person who knows that there's something else out there. That's a great book to read just for basic enlightenment. It's not about African spirituality or anything like that. It's just giving you an overlook of, yo, there's a lot of information out here, and basically a lot of what you've been told might have been bullshit. You know what I'm saying? And as an adult now, as I continue to read, because I always say I'm still learning. I'm always learning. You realize that a lot of stuff you wonder how much stuff that you've been taught really ain't true,
Right.
or
Or it's
not that
half
the best,
true.
right, or half true, or not the full story. And for a while I was very angry when I began to really realize certain things. I went through a phase of I was appreciating the knowledge, but I got angry at my parents and my grandparents, and then I had to tell myself, well, they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
They were only told what they were taught. So I actually had to forgive them, even though my parents are gone now. I actually had to forgive them because they just didn't know.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And their parents didn't know.
Exactly.
So I had to release that.
Yes.
Say, well, now you know. You
Yep.
understand what I'm saying? And so for those that want to hear, what I tell people is read, man. Go out there and read them books that you were told not to read, and you might find out something.
Exactly.
You might find out something about yourself.
Yeah.
That
Oh, that self-awareness is like
that's it. That's
the.
it.
Do you feel like? I feel like you have a very strong sense of self, and you've always had that. Do you feel like that served you well? Because there's so much information out there, and you finding a spiritual walk that was true to you.
Um, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I just knew, the road I started on wasn't the end all be all, and there was still a journey that I had to make. I would listen. I was 5 years old. I'll never forget this. I was 5 years old, sitting on my bed one day, just analyzing what I knew of at 5 years old of the world. And I was like, this shit is corny. Something is wrong here. Something is wrong. something's very wrong here. Something was off. I just could never know what it was at that age, but I knew something was off. You know what I'm saying? So it was just one of those things. So you know, throughout the years, I always sought knowledge,
Yeah.
and but I was afraid to read those books. You was always told, oh, blah blah blah, and reading these, you're like, okay, and like anything, you take what you can use,
Mhm.
you chew the meat, you spit out the bones, and you keep it moving.
Yep.
But a lot of stuff out there is interesting,
Yeah.
very interesting.
So I already know that you've got Santeria, which is on the E5 tree, one of the branches. That's what I like to call it,
Right.
on the E5 tree. So
Uh-huh.
having a practice that's a traditional African, I'm gonna call it a spiritual science, because the
Yes,
more you
yes,
learn
I
about
agree. It
African
is science.
religion, there's science, there's metaphysical concepts in
Right.
these
That's
things.
right. That's right.
So one thing that is consistent across indigenous and African traditions is ancestral veneration.
Yes.
And so can you talk about one, is it, you have it included with your practice, what that looks like?
Absolutely.
What was that,
Absolutely.
when you first
So
set up your ancestor altar, what was that moment like when you made that decision, I'm going to go ahead and do this?
it was so what brought me there was, again, I was still trying to find stuff. So I was also I was looking at witchcraft books. I was, digging into that. And there's stuff from that I use in my practices as well. And so one of the things that they kept referring to was they had mentioned the Book of the Dead, which of course is a Egyptian pantheon type of thing. But one thing in all the books, they always seem to talk about the first thing you need to do if you really want to get into the spiritual thing is make a space for your ancestors. That's it. They
Mhm,
always said that's the very first thing you should do.
mhm.
So I did that. And let me tell you something. The very first time I set up my ancestor altar, I never forget this. I had put up my flowers, I had my white tablecloth and everything like that. I had uh, cleansed the space and everything. And I had when I first did it, I forget what I did. I had a couple of uh, uh, glasses of water on it, and I never forget, man. I was there, for a few days every day doing my veneration, and one day I came into the room, and one of the glasses had had split. It didn't. It didn't explode, but it was almost like somebody had like a laser knife and cut through the glass. So it, like, say this glass here, it was cut this way, like a clean cut through the glass. And so one day I looked and I said, holy cow. And I picked it up, and sure enough, the glass was in two pieces. So I was like, whoa. So at that moment, I knew it was on. I said, oh, it's on and popping in here. I said, they done touched down.
Like,
And
is that
I
what
didn't
you
care.
needed? Like, let me ask that
Yeah,
question because I feel like everyone's
yeah,
spiritual experience is so different. Because if someone was to ask me, I have not had an experience quite like that,
yeah.
but I still know that spirit is close. So for
Oh,
you,
yeah.
knowing who you are as a person, do you feel like your ancestors, our ancestors knew you had to be hit in that way?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. 'Cause I need to, you try different things and everything. And so they turned up. They was like, yo, no, we hear you and we here. And that's how I knew. I said, oh, baby. Like when I saw that, it was almost like a eureka moment. I was like, oh, here we go. This is what's up. And I mean, I've had so many different experiences, honestly, at my, well, maybe not when I'm at the altar, but there are times where I'll put the lights out and know they're out and come back in the room, and the candles lit again. You know, so I mean, all types of stuff. You know what I'm saying? it's this, yeah. So yeah, definitely. But venerating and that changed my life. Honestly speaking, if I didn't do any other, can you hear me still?
Hmm.
If I didn't do any other thing besides that, just venerating my ancestors, I want to tell you, has changed my life dramatically. It has changed my life dramatically. I feel that, there are energies working with me to help me, throughout the day, and to help get what it is I want in life. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
that is self-enlightenment, self-betterment, not to feel like I'm alone.
Yes.
When you're going through sudden, when you're like, oh Lord, I've asked him for things. I've asked him for favors, always represented, always have come through. And I'm gonna tell you something else. They have been very protective of me because there's been certain things that have happened
Oh no.
that
Wait.
I know they don't play around. They're very protective of me, and like I said, I I ain't got nothing to worry about. You know.
Do you feel like on a personal level, oh wait, can you still hear me? Because, okay, there you
Yes, I got you. I got
go.
you.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. Um, do you feel like on a personal level, ancestral veneration has helped you with hmm, with grandma and grandpa being gone?
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yeah. They're passing. My mother and father, of course, your grandparents. They're my parents. For those that don't know. Their passing affected me. My father passed away 2002, and then my mother in 2012, 10 years after. And so both passings affected me a certain way. And I yes, absolutely, I do believe that venerating and acknowledging them at my altar has definitely helped. Again, it's helped my life tremendously, but I think it's helped in other ways as well. Absolutely.
Okay. Um, knowing that you have these energies and things around you, one thing I don't think I've ever asked you in conversation. So if you don't want to share or not, it's totally on you. Um, you got some spiritual gifts that you realize you did, like as you awaken. I know you dabble
Mm.
in magic, but have you noticed like you're clairaudient or you're clairvoyant or you
Oh
sentient?
man.
Like, have you noticed like when it happened, did it like what what in the world? Like, have you noticed and do you realize any of them were present when you were younger? You didn't realize what it was.
Yeah. So my gift, I would have to say, is dreams. Um, Many of the dreams I have that have a deep meaning, if you will, come true, even from a child. But I never understood it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as I began to take this walk, I began to understand a little bit better. But yeah, the dreams that I have uh, tend to come true. Certain events that happen definitely happen. If not in the exact same way it happens in a dream, is very similar. Um, for example, my last deployment, I saw that in a dream over 10 years ago. So when I actually got to my deployment, it was in the desert. I said, "Wow, this is just like it was in the dream." So I knew that was coming. Uh, 9/11, and that was before my walk. That I saw in a dream. 2 weeks later,
Wow.
two weeks later, that happened. Yeah, it was 2 weeks after I dreamt it. It happened. Um, so there's been a lot of heavy stuff that actually I've seen in a dream that has come to fruition. Some of it good, some of it like wow. So yeah. And one thing I do want to point out is that I think because of where we are right now in the world, how we're moving through the whatever you want to call it here, the dreams are now more frequent and the
Yes,
turnaround time is quicker.
yes.
So
I
before, like I said, I had a dream, 10 years later it happened. Now when I have dreams, it's like a couple of days, you know, next day, the following week. It's just super quick now,
Do you write them
So
down?
I don't always, I try to, um, but I have read, yeah, some of the ones that are just almost prophetic that I remember vividly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So do you think it's hereditary? Because I'm also a dreamer.
Whew. I want to say possibly because my mother, um, your grandma, used to have dreams about certain things. And you know, so it could be. I know she didn't like get too deep off into it because of her spiritual belief. But yeah, she would have these dreams. So I want to say it possibly is hereditary. Yeah. I want to
Um,
say it is.
um, for um, for people who are like what's the post I saw, like going to your ancestors, you can go, you say you can go to your ancestors, why can't you go to God? What is your answer to that question, that
Wow.
statement?
Well, um, I guess it would be my answer to that would be, well, I have now come to the conclusion that there's more than one. There's more than one God. So which God are you talking about? You know? Um I
I'm just waiting for you to choose violence. I'm just waiting for it.
yeah. I definitely
Waiting for you to choose violence. I get your
I
real call.
you
I
know
can't.
eh, there is we can say that there is one source, right? Which many call the creator or whatever, other people call it other things. But as far as gods, there's a whole bunch of those. So which one you talking about? You know what I'm saying?
Beautiful way
So,
to put that. I love
which one you talking about? Because I can tell you this, just saying, oh God, and when people say God is good, guess what?
oh God, I can't. I'm so
God, God and good is the same thing because it's from the Germanic. So when
yes.
people say, well, God is good, well, yeah, he is
He's
because it's
guiding
the
God.
same damn thing. It's a German. So you're actually talking about a German deity when you talk about God is good. It's good. And he had these two dogs on either side of his throne, right? So this German God who is good, right? He has these two dogs, and what is dog spelled backwards?
God,
There you have it. You know what I'm saying? So,
you do not
you know,
disappoint. Oh my goodness. Oh.
you
Um,
got you got I tell people all the time, and when you start doing etymology and doing research on where these words came from, you will be like, wow. So whatever God you think you're praying to may not be the one that's getting the prayers. You know,
that part. So thinking about words and names, and what does Habib mean?
Habeeb means beloved. It means beloved. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So one thing, like our last name Morgan,
Right.
and I was in a room on Clubhouse, and they were talking about names and things, and she didn't realize that I was in the room when she said this. I just happened to pop in and catch this part. But she
Hmm.
talked about Morgan, it means morning, but it also means to shine and to sparkle.
Hmm.
And I was just like, so you got a whole family that's light. you think about what shines and sparkle is light. It's like,
Hmm.
wow. So you're like, and you think about last names, your surnames are like supposed to be like what you're supposed to do. Like, like
Hmm.
the painters paint and things like that. So then you think about the Morgans are meant to shine. And I was like, how powerful is that? And then thinking
It is.
about grandpa and naming us and giving us all Hebrew names. And
Right.
apparently in Yoruba, my name is granting wishes. The mother
Mm.
grants wishes. And,
She. Mhm.
and I'm just like, oh, okay. So we have God as my judge. And I wrote about grandpa and I said, a lot of times I went by D for so long because I really just got annoyed with having to correct people pronouncing my name correctly. And then I think the first thing was the numerology of my name. My first name being an 8 and realizing like that's the manifestation. There's infinite possibilities. And then I could have been Danielle, and
Hmm.
L doesn't readily make people think of God, but Yah does. And so
Hmm.
all the ways my name could have been, he named me with Yah in my name. He
Right.
made sure
Right.
that people knew
Right.
that God was in my name. It's just like,
Right.
and now looking back, and you think about when your soul's like, hey, this is the energy I want my name to be. Even if we don't pick our name blatantly, we know our
Right.
name affects our destiny. So this is how,
Right. It carries a vibration on it. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so this is how I want. And like, what you think about the word that's trying to come out is anointing that was on grandpa to give
Hmm.
us all these strong, even
Yeah.
the, T-Ba, y'all all have a T,
Right. 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 Yeah.
like in your name, like, and that means
Yeah.
warriors. Like
Right.
literally, y'all, like a whole tribe of
Yeah.
warriors.
Warriors. Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
and I'm
Exactly.
just like, okay. Like you look now, it's just like, that's not a coincidence.
Right.
That's not a coincidence. Do
Right.
you,
It's not. Right.
having started your journey the way that you did you have someone on it with you? I know Auntie's with you now, but when you first really got started, and
Mm.
what's it like now to have her to know that you have other family members going through similar experiences now?
You know what? I did not have anybody really with me uh on my journey. Um Diane, my wife, she jumped on the journey uh with me, and then she found out some things about herself as well, which is very interesting. But she jumped on the journey with me later on, but in the
Mhm.
very beginning, it was just me kind of trying to figure this thing out. And but I began to share certain things. This is like around 2012, 2013, right after my mother died. I began to share certain things with her, and kind of find out she was kind of feeling the same way. And so she jumped on the journey with me at that point. But in the very beginning, when I used to have these kind of battles within myself about spirituality and religion, all that stuff, yeah, it's kind of like trying to figure it out, kind of like on my own. But yeah, she definitely. Uh, when I brought it to her, she jumped right on board. She's like, I've been feeling the same way too. Like trying to like, wait, what the hell is going on here? Like, we're doing a lot of begging and pleading, ain't too much happening. And then when we changed up, things changed for us, and we both had benefited from it. My wife, she's the child of Babaluaye.
Really?
So of course that spirit brings disease and cures disease. You know what I'm saying? So I was joking with her. I said, well, I guess 2020 was your year because the entire planet was afflicted, right? So the last couple of years. So I said, well, then, so you got to talk to Babalu Aye, baby, and tell him to chill out a little bit.
do, do you have, so I know when you went to the um internet settle
you know.
down, do you, hold on, am I frozen on your side? Okay, now you're not frozen.
Oh, you like idea, yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
so
go ahead. Mhm.
you, I know that you have a name from when you were with the 5%ers.
Mhm.
Did you get a name from Santeria? Like, do you have an
No, I don't have one yet. No, I do not.
Okay,
Not yet.
I was curious.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do not have one yet. No,
Whether
not
you would
yet.
have found a way to keep Hebrew in your name or not. I was
Right,
like, that was my
right,
question. Did you manage to keep Hebrew
right.
in your
I've been
name?
doing it for so long, right? I've been finagling it, but
You
yeah, I don't
know,
know.
like it's good enough. It's still,
Yeah, I do not have one yet. No, I do not. Yeah.
do you still keep the high holy days? Do you still keep Passover, Yom
So
Kippur?
I'm gonna tell you what. I do keep Yom Kippur and I keep um Passover. I keep those because they still resonate with me.
Hmm.
Passover resonates with me heavily because, like you said before, the tradition, of putting the blood on the doorposts and stuff like that, and just how that all the rituals within that day, the meat offering and all that stuff,
Yeah.
that symbolism there still resonates with me deeply. So whatever resonates with me, I still carry that on.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So it's in Yom Kippur. Um, Fasting and meditation is something that I do, in that day, and that resonates because you know what, you can kind of, if you're doing certain things, then you can kind of tap in,
Yeah.
So that resonates with me for that reason as well. Yeah,
Okay. Awesome. All right.
yeah.
Um, do you give lamb,
Oh,
horseradish and
I
stuff?
would be I would be remiss, okay, if I didn't put no lamb on that altar for your grandma and grandpa. I would be remiss. And I certainly do put their portion on the altar for them. Yes, I certainly do. I
That's,
absolutely do.
I
Yep.
love that.
Yeah.
For prayers for you personally,
Hmm. Hmm.
like you speak Hebrew,
Right.
um, in Santeria, do you know Spanish too?
So that's why I lean on my wife at with the Spanish side. But there's a lot of stuff that we just do in English, what have you. On Mondays we do a prayer for a legua. I have my legua altar at the door. That's where we keep him at, and we do our prayer for a legua on Mondays. We light his candle. We give him candy. I'll spit the rum on him. I'll do that. Um, yeah, yeah. So
Okay, all righty then.
yeah,
And I like the
yeah,
fact you say you do your prayers in English. Do you feel
yeah.
like it makes a difference at all to spirit how
You
you
know,
pray?
I'm gonna tell you. So I am I get because I'm still a student in the game. I'm always learning, and so English being a bastardized language. Um, I have listened to certain spiritual teachers that will tell you that if you say a prayer, if you can say it in another language, it may be more beneficial because of the vibrations on those words. So there's one prayer I say in front of my ancestor altar every morning before I venerate them. It's called the Anabacoak, and it's the miracle. It's actually called the miracle prayer, and I always do that before I open up with them in front of the ancestor altar. Me and Diane both we do that miracle prayer first, and that's all in Hebrew. But there's certain prayers that we do in English.
Yo, can you send that one to me?
Oh wow! So the Anabacoak is Anabacoak. Yudulat Yaminka Tati Ziru Akabel Renat Amka
Wait,
Sagavini
don't do it
Adon.
now because I'll leave. You
Oh,
need to send
okay.
that to me. Like, don't do it now
I
because
will
I
send
felt
it.
it.
Yeah,
I felt it
yeah.
like right there. I was like, no, 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 do that
Yeah,
now.
I'll send it.
No,
I'll
no,
send it to you.
I'm out.
Yeah,
Like,
I'll send it to.
like
I will send it to you.
send,
Yeah.
send that to me. Just immediately, I was like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
wait a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah.
You trying to have this flow? This is not this song. This is not the
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah. But
beautiful.
it's called the miracle prayer. Yeah. And I do that often. That actually is a prayer that you can do a couple of times a day if you want. But I always open up before the ancestors with that first, and then I go into my ancestor veneration. Yeah.
Um, do you feel like your practice is rigid and structured, or do you feel like it is fluid like
I want to say it's definitely not static. It's definitely fluid. I want to say you know, it flows. It's not dogmatic. Um, I stay away from anything that's dogmatic. Um, you know, I always approach any operation, whether it would be with the ancestors or with spirits or whatever, with respect and all that. But I'd stay away from the dogmatic side of things, because then you're just doing religion all over again. You
Exactly,
know what I'm saying?
exactly.
So yeah, it's definitely not dogmatic. It's not static. It moves. You know, we move. You know, the atoms in our bodies move. You know, so you know, for you to stay static, which is why I got away from my original practices, is because they were static. It was static and stagnant, the same thing over and over and over again. Um, we that's not who we are. We move. You
Mhm,
know, vibration moves, right? That's why they call it vibration. So,
mhm.
thus, you know, what I do is fluid as well. You know, it's very, like I said, it's eclectic and what have you. There may be a time where I'll go and maybe do something extra at a particular altar or during a certain operation that I'm doing spiritually, because it was on my spirit at that moment to do it that way. And then the next time I do it, might not do it that way again, you know. But in that moment, the
That's what you
spirit hit me
felt.
right, exactly, you know.
You, if you had to give, as we're wrapping up, if you,
Sure.
anybody Black and Christian listening, something that tells them what they think about people who practice traditional practices isn't what it really is, what would be that one jewel gem that you would say?
I would tell them to, whatever books, like I said, you were told not to read, read. Um, Educate yourself and read. And I would tell them that, you know, why was this stuff taken away from us when we got here?
Exactly.
Okay. And I'm gonna tell you a funny thing. I'm not gonna keep it long, but um, you know, it works, right? It works. I know it works. There's other people that know it works. So it's almost like somebody telling you before you're about to have a fight, don't do this, this, and this. I used to do that as a kid. I had a very good, my hands were very fast. I was good with my hands, but my wrestling skills went up to par, right? So I would always tell guys, look, we just do we this is just straight up fists. We're not doing nothing else. And they would listen to me. And I beat their ass. And then there was this one kid who was like, he agreed, but then he was like, what the hell am I doing? This is a damn fight. He's making rules in a fight. And so he was like, oh, we're not doing that at all. But that's what has happened to us as a people. We have been told, don't you do that. Well, why were you told don't you do that? Because it works.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And you know, as in anything, certain things in spirituality can be used for good, it can be used for bad, but they're gonna be used as protection. You understand what I'm saying? So the people that have told us for hundreds of years not to do this, they didn't want the business end of that, because they knew what they were doing to us was horrible and horrendous and wrong. So they would tell you, oh, don't you do that, because they knew it would happen. It would work, you
Yes,
know? So whatever evil they were perpetrating onto you would backfire onto them. That's why they tell you not to do it.
yes,
So I would tell my Christian brothers and sisters to read, man. Just continue to read and have an open mind to spirituality, because it is part of who you are. And
yes,
there's a lot in that Bible that you can use in your
yes,
spiritual practices. And like I said,
yes,
Psalms is definitely one of them. Psalms will if you don't want to, if you feel that some of it is too deep or spooky for you, you can just stick to the Psalms and rock out with that and be good, you know. So, you know, but you got to read and do your research. You know, you'll find out a lot of stuff. Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much. I learned so much. I learned so much. I don't know who showed up at the beginning when you was talking. This ear said, I said, oh.
Well, I'm glad.
That's why I looked up
I'm
like,
glad.
like I'm in my altar room, so I have
Nice,
my yacht is right here beside
nice.
me, and then I have a spot. Even though I haven't received the Molo Kun is over
Right.
here, so I'm like, it was this
Well,
year. It was like,
that's my spiritual mama. She in there too. So that's that.
yeah.
Yeah, is my spiritual mother. So
And then my ancestor one is right in front of me, so I'm just like, and I'm like, okay, the moment you went to speak Hebrew, my whole heart seized. I'm like, oh, wait, you gotta
wow.
stop. You because I go lift off, lift off. You about to go. You about
I
to
hear
leave.
you.
Somebody else gonna be here. I don't know what to tell you. So no, stop.
That's good.
But I
That's
really appreciate it. I really appreciate your openness to not only just this,
yeah,
but my questions when we talk. And I'm
yeah,
like, yo,
absolutely.
bouncing stuff off, like,
Yeah,
shared
I don't
experiences.
mind sharing. I don't mind sharing. And we can do this again. We'll sit down and chop it up again.
I thought
Absolutely.
that was dope. This was dope. So,
Yeah.
tell about. I'm gonna let you plug your podcast, plug what you do.
Right. So outside of this, I'm just like everybody else. I have aspirations and dreams that I'm still fulfilling in life. And one of those is that I'm a cigar aficionado. I have a cigar review channel on YouTube called Jakim's Cigar Journal. It's Jakim's Cigar Journal on YouTube. You can check me out there, where I review different cigars. I go to different cigar shops and I talk to people about cigars and things like that. And I also now have my own cigar brand. Mana Cigars LLC is my website.
I don't even smoke, and I'm just
www.manacigars.com.
gonna get a cigar. I don't smoke, but I'm gonna buy a cigar.
Yeah. And so I have my own blends of cigars there on my website, and so you can check that out. And one thing, cigars are also used in spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
So we can do a whole show on that alone.
Look. I'm
Maybe
here for
next
it.
yeah, maybe next time I'll get into that. But cigars are used in spiritual practice as well.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Uncle Habeeb. I love you so
Got
much.
it.
This was
I love you
so
too. I love you too.
dope.
I say. Yeah,
Ashay.
absolutely.
Don't hang up right away. I'm like in this and then I just
Yeah,
listen like
absolutely.
um
Absolutely.
so thank y'all for listening. I hope that y'all enjoyed this as much as I did. Definitely I'm gonna have all his stuff in the description box. Please check him out. He is the suavest brother on Instagram. I don't care what anybody else says. He's the suavest brother on the grams of Insta. Gratitude. Mm-mm. Thanks, Grandma and Grandpa.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Gratitude.
Ashay.
I say.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go before I get so I'm gonna go. Thank y'all so much for listening. Take care.
Thank
Oh, the
you. Love
YouTube
you.
version of this will be this will be up the Saturday after y'all listen to this on podcast. Okay. Now